ASU and ASU Care acknowledge the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses and ASU Care are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, including the Acamel A'atum and Peeposh Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. We acknowledge the sovereignty of these nations and seek to foster an environment of success and possibility for Native American patrons and communities.
Hi. We are assembled. My name is Jon Spelman. I am your host for the evening and one of your storytellers. And welcome again to another gathering. Gathering of gather. And I should explain myself and what we're doing a little bit here with canes and so forth. Now, I've lately been very thankful to the Mayo Clinic, which has caused me to not walk well, but I'm walking. And things are ticking. I've even been told that I have a small doctor's office living in my chest now, so don't mess with me. I'm a stranger here. I've only been in town about 7 or 8 years. And I keep meeting people who've been here or third or fourth generation. Do we have anybody who's at least second generation? There. Oh, okay. Bravo. Well, my wife and I came here from the east, back east, where she got a job at ASU. I've spent most of my adult life as a teller, a performer, a writer, a teacher, deeply connected with story and narrative. And so I was really happy to come here, first of all, for this night, to meet 3 very interesting storytellers that I'd never met before, and that's always a thrill for me. And the Gather itself is one of those places that's making the Phoenix area, the Valley area, a great place for story listeners and storytellers. We're glad you came out tonight. And I'll be involved in an event coming here on November 2nd, which I hope you'll come for too. Tonight's theme, it's great to have a storytelling evening with a theme, is Rebel with a Cause. And I know there's some people old enough in this audience to remember the 1955 film that had the title Rebel Without a Cause. But as I remember that film, it was about basically teenage kids, upper middle class teenage kids who seemed to be rebelling against everything, and they had no cause. But they really did have a cause. They had a cause for ending their own solitude, for their isolation from their family and from their community. And that's one of the things that storytelling has done for me throughout my life, is to help me understand myself better, but even more to understand other people better. And what a great crowd we've got sitting right there to let us understand ourselves. Our first storyteller, we're just going to get to it, is Radhika Kotwal, who is an amazing artist of a variety of things. She's a dancer who also just recently told me that she's danced a lot on this floor, and it doesn't bother her because she's barefoot and she has no skin left on her feet anyway after 30 years of doing Indian dance. The particular kind of dance she's done, one of 5 or 6 main varieties, I guess, in India, actually means story. And she runs her own dance studio. She's also a classical singer, is that right? And it says here too, an electrical engineer. Launched a business which is focused on the performing arts industry called Courtyardly. I should tell you just before I introduce here, everybody here is been asked to tell true stories, whatever that means in the storytelling world. And I've been asked to tell a folk tale, which will be a lie. So just to set that going. Could you just give a little applause for Radhika as she stands up to tell her story?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, John, for those kind words and the kind introduction. And thank you all for coming here. What a great, lovely evening. I really liked the theme when I was invited by Tracy, just the topic of rebel with a cause. My first gut reaction, of course, was, why does Tracy think that I'm a rebel? Why is she inviting me? But then when I thought about it, it was thought-provoking, right? Because the more I thought about myself and my story, I said, yeah, I'm probably not the one to walk straight and narrow, and I have had my share of, bending rules to define my story. So I'm here with you today to share some of my stories along the way, and hopefully you'll enjoy. So I come from a coastal town in India. That's where I grew up. It is a very small town. And my family moved there from a very big town, actually. So my family, the way we thought, we were a progressive family. I'm talking 30 years back, right? And then my mom enrolled me in dance lessons. Little did we know at that time that dance would be my passion for life. But as I was learning dance in a cohort, and then when I became serious about dance and had friends around, at around the age of 16, 17, I saw that many of my friends, girls, dropped out suddenly. Excellent dancers, very talented, but they just dropped out. And when I found out more, I realized that was because that was the age in that small town where their parents had started looking for marriage prospects for them. Right? That was the norm. And the perception was, actually dance did not cut through as, one of those skills in the checklist that a good bride would have. So that was it. So perception was a girl can either be good at her job or her passion, or not have one and just manage a household. And I remember even as a teenager, I made a mental note to myself, someday I'm going to role model the behavior slightly differently when I get the opportunity to. And fast forward, of course, decades later, when I got the privilege of owning my own dance company and leading it, the first thing and a very conscious effort that I made was not just to impart dance skills to my little girls, now blossoming into young adults themselves, but also teach them life skills. Teach them that, we are always having to juggle. I know we were talking a little bit about the multitasking thing when we were informally chatting earlier, but teach them life skills, right? And that nothing is impossible. Of course, as women especially, we have to do a lot more, I feel, to prove ourselves, but we are capable. And of course, now the day and age has changed for the better, but that remained in my mind, and it was a silent way of rebelling in some way or form that years later I had that cause in mind, and I'm trying every bit to make the most of it. I do realize I like breaking the norm. I question perceptions because before I want to assume a certain thing, I want to question it. Right? So as an electrical engineer, I was a hardcore techie. I've worked in the tech industry for about 25 years now, and I was a very hardcore techie initially as the early stages of my career. And then again, I was, something just happened. I was like, no, maybe I should explore a bit more in the same industry. I should maybe add some skills to my business acumen, and then eventually go into sales, telco sales. My nerdy engineering friends thought that I was moving over to the dark side. Like, that's okay, I like dark, I'm going to venture out into the dark. And then there were other friends, well-wishers, mind you, right? They had good intentions. Like, sales, telco sales, do you know what kind of a world you're getting into? A man-dominated world. Telco business is not something where you find many women, even today, actually. It's kind of unfortunate. But so, and then they went on to say, you know who you'll find? Old white men. That phrase kept repeating, right? Like old white men. And you know what? You don't even know how to play because that's where all the sales deals happen. What are you going to do? So all of these red flags. And in my mind, I'm thinking all these are perceptions, guys. Let me try out because I'm not going to harm anyone other than me, if at all. Let me try it out. And so that was my way of silently rebelling. But I'll tell you, that sales career has been the most rewarding. And I did walk into a room with 36 old white men, all right? And I was the only person of color, woman, to show up there but everyone is accepting. That's one key takeaway that I learned is when you put yourself out there and you have the right intent, and when you are not in a reactionary, I did not go there and say, hey, I'm here to disrupt you. No, they know what they're talking about. They have years and years of experience. Why not learn? I'll tell you, the most rewarding experience and the best colleagues are those 36 old white men and gentlemen, right? Till date, the best experiences, we have actually done millions of dollars in revenue by traveling worldwide with our cohort, with our group together. So that was, again, another lesson learned is if you have the right cause, rebel. In a certain way, I don't even know whether to call that rebellion, actually, but in some way, for me, it was. Talking about, worldwide travels, I've been very fortunate to travel a lot. And by travel, of course, you learn a lot, you mingle with different cultures. And while my colleagues were taking customers for golf, I used to take mine for concerts because that was very natural to me, right? As a performing artist, I was like, hey, let's, I have these tickets, let's go and attend concerts. And I was able to mingle with many artists along the way, many collaborations, learning about different cultures, each art form representing the uniqueness of a culture. So lots of learnings there. But in those experiences, what I also learned was there is a lot of disparity between different industry verticals. I'll tell you, forget the world, even in the US, the artist industry, we have an economic impact of 150 to 200 billion US dollars in annual spending. So, but then when we compare that to how much of an economic impact we have to small-sized freelancers, small creative businesses, and how much we earn, it's a disappointing ratio. Tech world, completely different, right? And it bothered me. It bothered me to think of it this way because, and especially when COVID hit, that was really bad because artists of high caliber couldn't do much. And we were left with, having to go from one gig to the other, benefits, and everything was taken away from us. So it was a very challenging time. And that's when it hit. And that's when I not only made a mental note, but I went one step beyond and I said, I've had a successful tech career. Yes, it's a high-paying job and it's going to be tough, but I'm going to take the bold step of going away from it, letting go, because I have the power of using the technology and to an industry which needs it. And that saw the birth of Courtyardly, which is my company, which is really that, we call ourselves the LinkedIn for artists, but we go a little bit further than providing a worldwide professional network. We are also trying to see how we can monetize or provide a good ramp for monetization for artists and the entire artistic ecosystem. So that's really where I am today. Was it easy? Is it easy? Because I just quit my tech career January 1st, 2023, to commit to this 100%, and it's been 10 months, and it is not easy. Every third day, I want to pull my hair off because there's so much happening. Getting from a corporate world to get habituated to an entrepreneurial world is tough. But is it fulfilling? Absolutely, 100%. Because when you get the validation for the cause that you're trying to drive from the community is supporting you. So in a nutshell and in summary, I will definitely say whatever it is, it's worth it to rebel if there is a cause. And I like to be careful about, self-validating that before acting on it, because you have to be very careful about being genuine about your cause. But if the intent is clear and if you are genuine about it, you will get the support. That's really my story in a nutshell. And thank you so much for listening to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I understand I have the privilege of being able to ask you one question.
All right.
Or one comment, too. I was particularly interested when you're talking about old white men. Oh,
It's right there, John. There we go.
John. If you're going to sit down, at least use your microphone. So my joke is gone now about the old white men. I don't know anything about them, but it would be good to hear more from you on that topic. Interesting, because we talked beforehand about you being a kind of serial rebel.
Yeah.
Right. Do you find that when you're working on a story, whether it's this particular one or not, that particularly around a theme, which is such an interesting idea, it makes you think of things that you might not have linked together?
Absolutely. In fact, my whole life journey has been like that, right? For the longest time, in my resume, I would just bring out the electrical engineering part, and I would shy away from even mentioning that I'm a performing artist. For the longest time, I maintained 2 different resumes. I myself had not linked my own journey,
Yeah.
But things like these kind of brought it together along. Even my migration from the engineering to the sales thing, I thought very consciously, like, hey, I have my dance company. I know what it is to sell in a very different way, right? But I am managing my own business. Why don't I try that in a different world? So kind of, came together and the worlds converged along the way, if that makes sense. Yeah, but the more consciously I tried to internalize it, I valued myself better, and then it came together well, I think. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, maybe. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Teller 2, it says here, is Navi Ho. You can look at the audience and decide which person I'm talking about. Navi Ho, and he says he's also called Navi. That's the question I'm going to ask you at the end, I think. Navi was born and raised in Phoenix, and they are Navajo, and their clans are, if I can remember this, Many Goats and Coyote Walks. Is that right? Navi uses a phrase about himself which I find very rich. He's a two-spirit gay person. And as I said when we were talking earlier, I think, boy, just to remind us that we are two-spirit people, or five-spirit people, depending on how long you've lived and what you've admitted and not admitted about your life. You have many spirits. You have many thoughts and feelings at the same time. And he's embraced them and put them together. and is very interested in psychology. He has a degree in psychology, and it says here that you're still planning on maybe getting a master's degree. Will you welcome, please, Navi Ho.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. First thing I want to do is introduce myself in Navajo. So, Yat Eshike Doshane Naviho and She, Eldasana, Maidesh Gizni and She, Tasan Hidashiche, Bitani Dashanella. So, basically, what I said is, hello, my name is Navi Ho. I am from the Many Goats clan and born of the Coyote Pass clan. There's so many different when it comes to clans. There's so many. But one thing I also wanted to say is thank you so much for doing the land acknowledgement. I'm loving that many people are putting that into whatever presentation they are, because we are ancestral land, and we thank all the indigenous people that were here, else we wouldn't have a beautiful valley to live in. So thank you. All right, so this thing that you see in front of you, this glitter, this makeup, this everything, this is Navi Ho. This is what I created. And as you said, you know, the two-spirit. I never knew exactly what a two-spirit person was. And coming here, I was like rebel with the cause. You know, I first thought of the movie too, but I wasn't sure exactly, am I a rebel with the cause? And actually thinking about it while in traffic on the 101, I thought about how am I a rebel with the cause? And in my growing up, I was always the one that caused the trouble, but never got in trouble. So I was always the one that was Wonder Woman and loved to twirl, while my other cousins were all the other superheroes. But they could not be, even the girls were not allowed to be Wonder Woman. And it was just seeing superheroes, seeing people, and you know, not even just superheroes, but my grandma and my mom, I embraced them so much. But as growing up, I never knew about these little things that happen and these little quirks that happen between me and my family. I always just thought I was the odd one out, you know, being gay and being Native American. I never understood what that meant. So growing up and learning out who I am, and then, you know, coming to age of just being gay and telling my mother that I was gay and telling my family and just coming out for myself, pretty much. I went to school, like you said, I went to school at ASU and I got my degree in psychology, but it took me a long time to get that degree because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I knew inside that I wanted to be a helper, a healer, somebody that somebody could go to and be safe. Never understanding that this also involved the whole two-spirit, which I will wrap it up at the end with that, how it all kind of conjoins into one little thing. But I did go to ASU, I obtained a psychology degree, and I knew that there was something I needed to do. There was a feeling that I needed to do for myself, but also for my community and also my indigenous community. I was like, how can I be a part of this fight for equality? Because that was one thing that was really on my mind at that time. How is the laws, how is things that are going on within the world are going to affect me, going to affect my family, going to affect my friends? And so in 2010, I met a group called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And what they are is a nonprofit organization that started in 1979 in San Francisco. And it was just these 4 guys who came from Ohio, decided to live in San Francisco, and had nun outfits because they were part of the Sound of Music. Decide to don these outfits and go into Castro and spread love and joy. And at that time in 1979, the whole AIDS epidemic was happening. And there was a lot of things, Cuban Missile Crisis, there were things that were happening within the world that these nuns, these drag nuns, helped the community bond and come together. And since then, they've been worldwide. And I was like, what is that? You know, because They don't look like this, unfortunately. They have a white face, and they look like clowns, kind of. But they were out helping their community and raising funds, raising awareness. They started this first safe sex kits, which were, they handed out to Castro just to help what was going on to their family and friends. And to see and to hear the different stories that would happen within this organization, I was like, I think I want to do that. However, I don't want to wear a dress. I don't want to wear heels. I don't want to wear makeup. I can't do this. And then after a year of just kind of coming to terms with myself, I did it. I joined, and I became a fully professed sister in 2011. And in that, I went out to the community, and I donned the name Navi Ho because I wanted to embrace my culture, my tradition, who I was as an Indigenous person. Again, not knowing that there was a two-spirit thing going on. I was like, how else can I help the community? After that, in 2014, I met another organization that was doing great things within the community called the Imperial Court of Arizona. And they're part of an international imperial court that started also in San Francisco. And I found out it was in 1965. And same exact kind of scenario that they do within the community. However, they wear gowns and jewelry and mimic basically what the royals do over in England and any other royals do. So they do the whole pomp and circumstance and everything. It's a long coronation. If you've ever been to one, it's really, really long. But I never saw people with my color. I never saw people who were Indigenous or a person of color. So when I decided to join, they were like, you're going to become an empress one year. And I'm like, okay, 2040 is when I'm going to become empress. And they're like, that's so long ago. Hey. And I'm like, I don't know. We'll see what happens, because I'm already doing a sister thing. I'm kind of getting in the community. And there was just a lot going on. And I was like, okay. One night we were talking, and they were like, you're going to run for empress. You're going to be our first Native American empress here in Arizona. At that same time that I put my application in, my partner had a stroke. And it was a really bad stroke, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But when he woke, after his coma, he's like, you need to run. You need to do this. This is something for you and your people. You need to be proud of this. So I ended up doing it. I ended up becoming the first elected Native American empress in Arizona, and I represented the whole state when we went to a national imperial meeting that happened. And it was amazing to see other people, and they were just like, we are so proud to have a Native American empress, finally. And I was like, okay. So I started again doing my community work, going to events, fundraising, sharing my stories, doing things such as this. And I was like, all right, what else can I do? And I met an individual at South Mountain Community College. I believe it was something like this too, a storyteller. And his name was Clyde Hall. And he goes, have you ever heard of the Two-Spirit? And I'm like, no, what is that? That sounds very Indigenous. I'm like, let me get into this. And come to find out, it is what it is, like you were saying. It is the five beings. It is the essence, the female essence, the male essence in one person. And we all have it in ourselves, but within the Indigenous community, we call it Two-Spirit. And I was like amazed, like, what is this? What is this? So at the Heard Museum one night, they had a viewing of a movie called Two-Spirit, the Freddie Martinez story. And come to find out, this individual was a Two-Spirit person living in, I think it was Durango, Colorado, and they were embracing this traditional name and this traditional being that I never knew about. And I do keep in mind that I did not be the first one to learn Navajo. I was not the one that learned the traditions. I was, again, the rebel, I guess. That's where it comes from. But now I've learned exactly what it means to be a two-spirit person. These two-spirit people within the community were the shamans, were the relationship givers, were the hunters, were the gatherers, were the daycare, babysitters. They played every part of society that we look at as female and male. They play those roles. And anytime they needed to be called for prayer or anything like that, it was those two-spirit people that were brought forth. And they were the ones to do so many amazing things within their community, and they were looked up highly. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I never knew. So I asked my mom, I go, did Navajos have this? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay. So then I went to my grandma. Grandma, this is happening. She goes, yes, but I don't remember what they were called. Because, you know, with colonizations and everything, with the residential schools and things like that, things were wiped out. Things, stories and stuff like that were gone. So I started to reach out to my friends and ask, what is this? What is this about? Who is this? And then I found out within the Navajo culture, there's a nagle, which is a male two-spirit person, and then there's a delba, which is a female two-spirit person. And again, the same stories were just taught to me about what these were, who these people were. And I'm just thinking, that's me. That's who I am. I'm a two-spirit person. All this stuff that I did prior to learning all this was getting me ready to understand what it meant to be a two-spirit person and embrace this part of my culture. And I was like, but all the rallies, all the protests, all the, blocking of, anti-gay people, anti-gay groups and things like that, things that I did, taunting them and, raising flags and just, being my authentic self, brought me back to like, this is what a two-spirit person did. It may have not been with the glitter, may have not been with a bunch of makeup, may not have been with a pretty gown and dress, but they embraced themselves and they were able to help their community and be there and be strong. So using the theme of a rebel with a cause, that's it. I was that. I was the rebel, even though sometimes I don't feel like it. But I was a rebel with a cause to help somebody. And as I was talking to the others, and I said, if one person was to come tonight and I connected with that person, I did my duty. I did what I feel a two-spirit person will do within a community. And just to be able to tell my story and just be able to be my truth and give my truth to you all, that's growth. That's amazing, because I was the wallflower prior to 2010. I sat in the back. I didn't raise my hand. I was the typical Native kid that didn't do anything but just smile and nod. And now I'm an activist. I march. I do things. I become Miss Two-Spirit Montana. I'm out with my community. I'm helping my transgender Native people, and I'm helping my gay reservation LGBT Two-Spirit individuals and embracing them, because eventually I'm not going to be here, and we're going to still be fighting this equality and fighting the injustices that are happening within our community that are affecting all of us. And I want to embrace this rebel with a cause, and I'm so honored to be here, because it just made me think that I matter, I am loved, I am beautiful, and then I turn that back on you all, because you are loved, you matter, you're beautiful, you're strong, you're amazing. So that's my story.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you, but I want to make a comment first. You've, I think your story did it as well. It reminds me of the power and the truth of storytelling, and how important it is to tell all these stories to each other, but to listen to those stories from other people is the real gift that we can make. And I'm enlarging from the beauty of what you said, that and changing one person's mind. I imagine myself being in a political, or any of us being in a political situation these days and talking to those people who are on the other side of the spirit world from me. And how much can we talk to each other? How much room will we listen for people to tell their stories? So nobody, when you're doing storytelling, nobody has a chance to interrupt and say, wait a minute, that's not true. Or, yeah, but my experience was, no, let's listen to your story and get into it. And it's a beautiful individual story, but it's also at the same time a story for all of us to understand. My question is, I know a couple of Native American indigenous tellers, some of whom say that they shouldn't tell their native tales at certain times of the year or in certain places or to certain audiences. Is that also true of the Navajo tradition?
Yes, many of the storytelling happens during the winter and the fall because it's cold. You know, they wanted to stay indoors. A lot of the games that we play, a lot of the things that we do is usually during the winter time. And one of the things that I did as to compete for Miss Montana Two-Spirit was I had to do something traditional. And it was, fortunately, most of our traditional dances were in the fall, and I was doing this in the summer, and I didn't want the deities and all the holy people to get mad at me. So I had to figure out how I was going to do it, because all the things that I know were done in the fall, in the winter. And yes, there is a time and a place for each storytelling to happen, but most of the time it's very just automagical is what I say, because you just don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, and you're going to share that story, and hopefully that story helps them.
Thank you. Bravo.
Can I ask you a question? When you were at the herd, did you learn about hosting cloth?
Yes, I did.
Thank you for joining me in this sitting and standing, by the way. Well, you're doing the standing part. I'm going to wait for a big finale at the end. We have another very interesting storyteller, Laura Rutherford, who is talking about stories in the winter. You described yourself as being the child of two storytelling parents. And I come from that too. Back in the olden days when people used to talk to each other while they were home, and they didn't watch television or not nearly as much. There's that old tradition of storytelling within the family that this kind of setup reminds me of. That, Grandpa sitting in a chair and telling stories about World War I, or in some cases, the Civil War stories I remember hearing. It's very rich. It also reminds me that I wanted to say at some point, early on as a storyteller, I became enamored of someone who told me once, he said, the value of storytelling, he said, well, you've seen television, and I said, yes. He said, I've always regarded television as a poor substitute for storytelling, as a poor substitute for the radio. And when I think about that, the power of the spoken word on the radio can actually be stronger than the spoken word on television. That's enough of my editorializing. So Laura's a storytelling native who's has studied at South Mountain Community College, which another place like The Gather is a place where storytelling is really being built and really growing. She works as an event planner for Arizona State University, which sounds like a very big, crazy, important job to do. I meant to ask you about this phrase earlier. You describe yourself as a bookworm/dragon. What does that mean?
It just seems to me that a book dragon's much cooler than a bookworm.
Okay. Will you welcome now Laura Rutherford?
"1975. I was going into 5th grade. I was really looking forward to it. 4th grade had been really rough. We'd had one of those mythical evil teachers. You know, one of those people who should never have even been around children, let alone teach them. She'd come into our school for a 1-year contract and almost destroyed the entire 4th grade. And the only way we survived was to remember that in 5th grade, because it was a K-5 school, in 5th grade we were going to be the kings and the queens of the school. We'd get all the privileges, all the responsibilities, and we would be cool. So in 1975, we were looking forward to coming in 5th grade. A little hesitant because our 5th grade teacher was a male, and it's the first time any of us had ever had a male school teacher. And it seemed a little weird, but he was okay. He wasn't the evil one, so we were good. Well, that 1-year contract meant that the new 4th grade teacher who had come in, they had designated her as the head teacher. So when we asked our 5th grade teacher, Mr. M, when were we going to be assigned all of these lovely new responsibilities and privileges like library helper or equipment helper or helper in the office and the runners, he said, well, the head teacher is going to assign all of those roles. And didn't she just give them to all of her 4th graders? So we were riled up anyways. We were set to be rebels. And of course, in 1975, that means for the 75-76 school year, we were all in preparation of the big bicentennial celebration. So there were going to be all these events all year long and lots of history teaching about those rebels back in the colonies. So again, we were being subtly guided somehow into rebellion. When our 5th grade teacher, Mr. M, told the girls we couldn't play football, well, we weren't going to have it. We said, well, all right, fine, we won't play with the boys, but what about girl football? No. What do you mean, no? Haven't you ever heard of the ERA? He said, no football. I said, well, what about touch football or flag football? We don't have to have full contact football. We can play football. No. So didn't we gather all the women in 5th grade? Didn't we carry signs protesting, saying that, equal rights for women and girls, equal rights for women and girls? It didn't work. That just riled us up some more. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know if it's because they were so busy buying art supplies for this bicentennial thing, but they weren't spending it on the food. And I know school cafeteria food isn't good. It's not supposed to be good, right? It's supposed to be nutritious, supposed to get you in and out and have the calories you need. But even school cafeteria food should taste like something. And it had just, since the beginning of the year, been going down, down, down. I mean, the cold food was kind of warm, and the hot food was kind of warm. And the only thing you could reliably count on was that lovely box of milk that you would get with your tray, because at least it was always cold, and you knew when you opened it, it would be consistent and tasty and good for you. when one day we came into the cafeteria, picked up our trays, and I can't remember what else they were serving. I think maybe it was a goulash, but in the corner was a pile of canned spinach. Now, I don't know. I'm quite sure, at least you've seen it, right? It's that grayish green glop. I only ever knew one person in my entire school career that could choke that down. It wasn't me. And the rest of us, we were just, oh. And I noticed as people were starting to open up their milks, right, the one reliable piece of nutrition we had, that the cafeteria just got quiet. And I opened mine up and I took a big glug. It was sour. It was sour milk. And I looked at all the people around me, and they had sour milk too. All of us had sour milk. We couldn't believe it. So we talked about what we should do, and I was usually a spokesperson. I'm sure you're surprised by that. And I was requested to go and talk to the cafeteria workers. So I made a couple people come with me, and we were polite, and we just let them know, you know, that the milk is sour. Could we get some new milk, please? Nope, that's all the milk we got. If you've got a problem with your milk, you're going to have to go talk to a teacher. But you're the people that give us the milk. Well, we can't do anything about it. Go talk to your teachers. Now, and maybe you'll know this, but in the cafeteria, right, all the teachers were in one long head table. So I took the people with me, and we walked up to the head table. I was a little trepidatious about this, but I said, excuse me, but we've talked to the cafeteria workers, and they told us to come talk to you. Our milk is sour, and we would like new milk, please. Well, what are we supposed to do about the milk? We're not the cafeteria workers. If you want new milk, you need to go talk to them. But they said I should talk to you. Oh, no. You need to go talk to them. So we turned around and went back to the cafeteria. This went back and forth a couple of times until finally we all realized we were going to get no satisfaction. So the milk was not drunk and the food was not eaten. And we put our trays away, and instead of myself going out to the playground, I said, I'm going to go write a letter to the school board. So I did. I went back to my classroom, and I got out, the paper, and I wrote, Dear School Board, the food has not been so good here at Franklin Elementary School, and we would like you to do something about it. The hot food is cold, the cold food is hot, and today we were served sour milk. I am sure that you can see this is a big problem. I look forward to hearing about what you're going to do about it. Sincerely, Laura Rutherford. I folded it all up. I asked for an envelope. I took it up to the front office. On the front of the envelope was written, Phoenix Elementary No. 1 School Board. And I trusted them to post it for me. Well, everybody knew that I had written the letter. And some of them were even a little impressed that I would take such a step. So when the buzzer in the clock buzzed, and somebody went from our classroom to find out what they wanted, they came back with a yellow note, and it had my name on it. Ooh, right, the class. And so I held my head high because I knew I was in the right. And I marched off to the principal's office, and they ushered me in, and he's reading my letter, and he says, oh, I've read your letter. Is this really what you want to say to the school board? I said, well, I didn't lie. That's all truth. We talked to you and we talked to the cafeteria people, and nobody's doing anything about the food or the milk. Aren't they your bosses? I mean, I was polite, but I was firm. And he said, well, yes, but if I send this letter, it's going to cause all kinds of trouble, and maybe we could work out together a better way to phrase this. And there was a lot of political talking, and some of it went over my head, but enough of it penetrated into my ear, through my ears and into my little 5th grade brain, that I could see I was going to get nowhere with this letter. And so I took back the letter, and I very dramatically tore it up. And I said, "Sir, please disregard." I had a pretty big vocabulary. And I walked out. And I thought, well, I tried. Wait till I get home and tell my mother. But that wasn't the end. That head teacher found out about my milk rebellion and came into my 5th grade classroom to yell at me in front of the whole class. I had to stand up, and she had a lot of this going on, and she says, "Young woman, what are you complaining about? What do you want us to do? Have a cow in the front lawn and make you fresh milk every day? Sour milk has never hurt anybody." And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am," politely but very firmly. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but when I was a baby, I had some sour milk and I ended up in the hospital. Sour milk can make you sick." "I'm just telling you it's not a big deal," and she slammed out. I got applause from the classroom. What I learned, because I did go home and tell my mother, what I learned is I think they were afraid of me and my letter, that my voice, even though I had to take it back, mattered enough. The food got better. The hot food was hotter, and the cold food was colder. It was never amazing. Don't get me wrong, I did get a miracle. But we never had sour milk again. And there were other rebellions through that year, some of which I led, some of which I followed. Voices matter. And to this very day, social justice is very high on my priority list. I shop some places, I don't shop others. I tell people who ask me. I watch the news. I sign petitions. I vote. Voices matter.
Thank you. You reminded us all, I think, that we're talking about two spirits, that we're all 5th graders at heart, and that at times our 5th grader comes out, or maybe it never left, and it goes on. At the age I am now, I remember my dad told me once, he was probably only 60, he said, "John, I'm really upset." He said, "Every time I look in the mirror, I think, what happened to that 12-year-old boy who used to live in there?" Stories really do that for us and remind them of it. My question is this a story you worked on for this theme, or did the theme come to you and you said, "Oh yeah, I've got that story I've told before"? How does that work?
For this particular theme, that story is what has been in my repertoire for a really long time. Sometimes I combine it with the 4th year of, HE double hockey sticks as part of the rebellion. But yeah, as soon as I heard about the theme, I thought, I know exactly what I'm going to do.
Right. Stories get used in lots of different ways, don't they? Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. You guys doing all right?
Yeah, good.
We got more to hear. We're going to get to hear from the audience some. So we're open for your questions pretty soon, but I think we should go right to your questions right now and see how you're doing. And I bet wonderful Tracy's got a microphone somewhere.
I do. We don't want to hear your story first. Are you going to do your story after the questions?
You're right. I just skipped myself.
We're not skipping your story, John.
Oh, well, never mind. No. Oh, but thank you, Tracy.
Absolutely. It's whatever order you want to do it in, though.
Because actually I have 2 short stories to tell you. One I described briefly. The other is just a little bit of a longer story that I'll be doing here very soon, a week from Friday, a story entitled Frankenstein's Creature Tells His Story. And we all know the movies and the bad cartoons and the hulking monsters. But that story comes from a very rich novel written by a very talented teenage girl and first published in 1818. And this story, as I tell it, reflects Mary Shelley's language, which is a very rich, unusual language. And this space will be wonderful for it, because in my imagination, I am the creature, and I've assembled a small group of my friends to listen to me. I'm over 200 years old now, so I know about the character I'm talking about, not me. And I know about things like digital communication. So I'm making a podcast in front of a live group of friends. And it's a wonderful sort of idea for a homemade production and a story. So Frankenstein, you know, is the name of the doctor, the medical student who launched into this great crusade to build life, to protect us, he says, from all the inconsistencies and problems of sexual attraction. We can create life in much more interesting ways. And Creature says, when I imagine how I came into life first, I'm in a gloomy room. This doctor is leaning over me, trying to see this representation of a human being that he met, and he's filled with disgust and loathing. He says, I'm a creature, I'm a hideous monster. And filled with disgust and loathing, Dr. Frankenstein ran out of the room, fell down in a fit, and did not recover his senses for a long, long time. And the creature, a full-grown man with an infant's brain, had to somehow manage to leave the place of his creation, despite his fears and his physical abnormalities. He breathed, he moved, he wiggled, he walked, he stood up. He walked despite his lameness. He walked, and he ended up downstairs and outside, and he could feel the earth under his feet and between his toes. And as he walked, it grew warmer and warmer and warmer, until finally, to escape the heat, he sought refuge in the forest near Frankenstein's laboratory, and there he lay, resting from his fatigue until he felt the pangs of hunger and thirst. He ate some berries which he found, slaked his thirst at a brook, and then for the first time was overcome by sleep. And when he awoke, it was dark. He felt half frightened instinctively, as it were, and cold also. Upon leaving Frankenstein's laboratory, he had covered himself with some garments, but these were insufficient. He was a poor, miserable, cold, deformed, isolated creature who knew and could understand nothing. Feeling pain invaded him on all sides. And I noticed little drops of water were appearing on my hand, and I wondered at their origin, when suddenly I realized water was falling from my eyes, and immediately I began to weep uncontrollably. He felt hunger and light and thirst and darkness, hunger and light and thirst and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in his ears, and on all sides a multitude of scents saluted him. The only thing which he could begin to distinguish was a soft, radiant light form that moved slowly through the sky beyond the trees. After several nights and days in the forest, Creature's thoughts became more and more active. Gradually, he distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees one herb from another. And it was the sparrow, he found, that uttered harsh notes, while those of the thrush and the blackbird were sweet and enticing. Sometimes he tried to imitate the songs of those birds, but the fibrous growths then dangling from his palate made it exceedingly difficult. He could only make uncouth and inarticulate sounds. One day, oppressed and cold, he found a low fire burning and was overcome with delight at the warmth he experienced from it. He thrust his hand into the live embers, and drew it out again. How strange, he thought, how strange that the same cause should produce such opposite effects. After study, he found the fire to be composed of wood, so he quickly collected some branches, and then he contrived a fan and waved it into flame so that he could have more of this element, warmth. And later he found that this element, fire, was useful to him in his food if he placed it in the live embers. Well, the berries were spoiled by that operation, but the nuts and roots much improved. Food, however, became scarce. He often spent the whole day searching for a few acorns. He resolved, therefore, to leave his place of habitation, though in this emigration he exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire, as the weather had grown bitter cold. Several days he came into more open country. There it was even colder. The fields were of one uniform white in color, his feet severely chilled by this damp substance that covered the ground. He longed to obtain shelter and some food. At length he perceived a small hut. This was a new sight to him, and he examined the structure with great curiosity, until by mistake, pushing open a door, he entered. A one-legged human sat on a stool, but seeing creature, he gasped, jumped up, backed quickly out of the hut, and scooted across the fields with the speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. But I was enchanted by the hut. No snow had penetrated it. The ground was brown and dry. It presented to me then as exquisite and divine a retreat as pandemonium appeared to the fallen angels in Paradise Lost by John Milton. The next day I commenced my travels in the direction the one-legged had departed, and at sunset I arrived at a village. Miraculous. Huts, cottages, homes, the smell of milk and vegetables. I entered a building. Children shrieked. A person ran outside screaming. The whole village was roused and it attacked me, and until grievously wounded by stones and other missiles, I escaped unperceived into the open country, and at dusk fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare. And here I hid myself, happy to have a shelter from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the barbarity of humanity. And the next morning he discovered on the other side of the wall was a hut containing a family of 3. That is where his education began, and it has not ended to this day. And of course, from there, Creature goes on for quite a bit more. He's got 200 years left to live. And just a very different story, very quickly. I want to tell you a very true story about me as a boy. It's a special kind of rural storytelling called crazy telling or backward telling. So you have to listen carefully. My dad and I lived way out the tough of the creek, about a mile and a half, 2 mile, 3 mile. And one day I says to Paul, I says, "Hey, Paul, let's go larrupin', rarrupin', terrapin, scoonkin hunting." And he said, "Well, sure, but we got to round up all them dogs." So we did, we rounded up all the dogs, well, old but old Shorty, and then we didn't round him up either. And then Paul says to me, he says, "Hey, listen, son," he said, "you forgot your chores. I want you to mow the garbage and carry the grass out of the house, if you would." And I said, well, I would. So I mowed garbage, I carried grass, and by the time I was done, all the dogs were not rounded up anymore. Well, all but old Shorty. So I says, the heck with this, I'd rather go visit my Sal gal. See, my girlfriend Sal, she lived way out the tough of the creek. And I knew I'd have to ride the horse there. And I asked Dad, could I ride the horse? And he said he didn't care. So I went out, and here's what I did. I put the horse up on the saddle, throw the reins up over the barn, led the fence up beside the gate. The horse got on me, and away we rode. Rode down that long, straight road. You know, the one there that runs around all over the place. And we came by a little house I hadn't noticed before. It's made out of corn pone and shingled with pancakes. I got off my house, walked up to the horse, knocked on the door, and a woman came out. And she says, hello, big guy. She says, could I offer you a piece of milk and a glass of cake? And I said, no, thank you, ma'am. I don't care for some. I just had any. But I'd be happy to talk with you. And we were talking, but all of a sudden, this big bark came out and dogged at me, so I had to leave. Horse put me up on his back, and we went down through the little valley there that sits up on the edge of the hill. And there were all these roast pigs running around with knives and forks stuck in their backs, and they're squealing, eat me, eat me, eat me. Well, terrified my horse. She stumbled, and she threw me right over her head and tail, right face foremost, flat on my back in the middle of a creek up on a big pile of dirt. And it bruised my sleeve, tore one shirt right out of my pants. But I saw I was in my wrong mind and only a little bit dry. So me and the horse kept walking on down there, and we came to Sal's house. If you're ever down that way, you could see it for yourself. It's a great big white house right on the creek, and it's got both front doors on the back side. And then I saw something that just made my heart leap with love for Sal, because, see, her old man didn't like me. So when he was gone, she'd have both front doors nailed shut wide open. So I thought, hot dog. So I tied my fence to her horse and went on in. Threw my hat in the fireplace, spit on the bed, and sat down in a big armchair on a stool, just as close to Sal as I could get. She was on that side of the room and I was on this one. And we started talking about, you know, love, kissing, and love, and politics, and dog ticks, and head ticks, and fleas, and gnats, and cockroaches. And I says, look, honey, I said, that's not all that romantic. Let's you and me go down to the peach orchard. I'll pick some apples, and you could cook us a nice warm orange pie for supper. And she asked me, she didn't care. So we did. And on the way down, I got as close to Sal as I could get. She was on that side of the road, and I was on this one. And we got there. I says, okay, baby, I'm going to climb up the mango tree and shake some grapes down on the ground. And she said she didn't care. And I didn't care that she hadn't cared that I didn't. And she didn't care that I hadn't cared that she hadn't cared that I might. So I did. I climbed that tree, and I shook, and I shook, and I shook. But I shook myself right out of that tree. I landed right astraddle of a barbed wire fence. Ooh. Broke my right leg here, just above the elbow. But she fixed me up, and she took me back to the house, and finally it got romantic. I don't know if you've ever done this, but we were casting our love fortune, drawing cards one at a time. Sal went first, and she drew a heart. Oh, that seemed so right. And then it was my turn, and I drew a spade. And I thought, that's good. I'm handy around the house. And then Sal went again, and she drew a diamond. And then Sal's old man walked in, and he drew a club. So I said, bye-bye, honey. If I don't see you anymore, the old gray mare is yours. And I rode on home. By the time I got there, Paul finally had all them dogs rounded up. Well, all but old Shorty. We didn't round him up either. But it was too late to go out. It had gotten dark, so what a dumb day, boy. I had that day. I had no girl, 3 black eyes, 2 corn pone houses, and all them dogs. That's a story true. Frankenstein is also a folk tale of kinds. Let's talk back about these guys. Thank you all very much for putting it through that and for giving me the privilege of making nonsense at the end. Tracy, you got that microphone? Okay, let's see if people have any questions or comments. If you want, you're allowed to say how much you love things, what really interested you, what moved you, what made you happy.
All of your stories moved me and made me happy. I have a question for Miss Navi Ho. I'm Belagana, but I do know that Miss Navajo Nation here in Arizona, one of the things you have to do to win is to butcher a sheep. Did you have to do anything similar to be Miss Montana?
No. I saw my grandma butcher a sheep one time, and it was the most traumatic thing in the whole wide world. Since then, she always had bologna and ham for me to eat because I wouldn't eat any mutton. But no, they don't. For the pageant, it was just something traditional, which a lot of the Navajos that I was talking to, they're like, butcher a sheep. No. And then it's just traditional drag that we would do, like at a show or something like that.
This is for the man that told the story. I forgot your first name. John. Yeah, John.
John, yeah.
Yeah, so I really like the story that you told. The one where you like changed the words around.
Yeah.
What's the word in English to describe that pattern that you did, like changing the words around?
I've
Is
just
there a
heard it
word for
as crazy telling.
Oh,
But I don't know. Anybody know there's a word for that? Oh, just a sec. I'll answer that question in a minute.
Spoonerism?
I don't know what the word is. Do you? Okay, be a good search engine can find that for us.
Susan thought it was called spoonerism.
That's a spoonerism? I don't know. You have a microphone, Tracy, but I didn't hear what you said. Oh,
Spoonerism is where you change the first syllable or the first letters of the word, not the whole word.
oh, right. The question was,
So we still don't know.
the soft question in the front was, did I make up that story? I know not. Yes, I mean, the sort of folk tradition I come from is leave it better than you found it. So I'm sure I heard that story or variations of that story along the way. But I talked to a guy once who was known as the Texaco Teller, who used to hang out at the Texaco station. And that's what he said. He told me, just tell any story you want, but just leave it better than you found it. Which, of course, is both egotistical and inevitably true, because you tell it your way. So is that a question?
Well, for Navi, are you familiar with Kent Monkman? Are you familiar with Kent Monkman's work?
No.
Go to the Herd. They have his stuff on the new exhibit in the main gallery. He twists around. He has his key character is Mischief Testicle. And in his artwork, what he does is twist the stereotypes. Very interesting. So he's a rebel in every sense of the word.
I have a question for anybody who wants to answer it, because I think maybe at least one of you kind of answered it in your story, but when you heard the theme for tonight, how long did it take you, or what was the thought process in coming up with the story based on the theme?
We sort of had one answer from Laura, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, when it was surprising that you thought of me being a rebel. So it was an aha moment for me itself, right? But then when I thought through it, kind of started connecting in my mind. And then I just thought of starting from my childhood days and, linking one episode after the other, and it kind of made sense suddenly. Yeah, so it was very thought-provoking for me. And I just liked how you put it too, right? With a cause. That's so important. Because otherwise, a rebel can have a negative connotation associated with it. But this, when it is a rebellion with a cause, it has a positive twist to it. So.
Navi, do you have?
Oh, well, actually, to be honest, I didn't know that there was a theme until this past week when I saw the post from Ashika. I'm like, Rebel with a Cause, what's that? That's cool. And then I saw your guys' email saying this is what we're going to talk about. Oh, okay. I just thought we were just talking. I didn't think there was a topic. But it did definitely think about the things that I've done within my community, that we do crazy things, especially as sisters, and I had to make sure I didn't give any R-rating things that we've done, but it all happens to benefit others, and that was just a nice way of thinking about it.
Laura, do you want to add anything to what you said earlier?
Nope, I think I answered that question. So immediately I knew that was the story I was going to tell.
Yeah, where I felt a different task. I was doing a folk tale. And then I thought, oh, gee, I want people to get a little taste of Frankenstein, the creature, and hope they'll come a week from tomorrow at 7:30 right in this room with thousands of friends. But then it made me rethink the creature. So, because he really has an enormous cause, which is to be accepted as a living, breathing creature, which of course is ultimately the goal we all have, to be accepted for who we are. So it was useful for me to think that way and to think, oh, this story will work with that.
It does work. But I also wondered, you probably know lots of folk tales and lots of stories. How did you come upon that other crazy tale to tell tonight?
Well, why did I choose that one?
Why did you?
That has to do with, that choice was made after I decided I wanted to do a little bit with the creature. And that's pretty serious. It's very rich and full, but it's pretty serious. And I thought, oh, it's always good to end with something silly. That's my fifth grader wanting to do that.
Hi. Your name is easy, but I'm sorry, I don't remember the gal the tech.
Radhika?
Radhika.
Yeah.
Geez, I got that right. Would it be asking too much? You have a dance school, correct?
I do, yeah.
Would it be asking too much for, dance also tells a story, to maybe give us a minute of what it is you teach?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My dance is called Kathak. And like John put it earlier, Kathak means a story. So the way it comes from the word katha, which means a story. And traditionally it was done by villagers. They would go from one village to the other, telling stories. That's how it evolved. So it wasn't even a dance form yet. It was more a storytelling form, where it then got improvised on stage, where the musicians would come in. It was all very extempore. And then everything was live performance. It was a solo format originally. And of course, then later on, it went into a group choreography format. But that's how it evolved. So, sorry.
She asked if you could show a couple of moves.
You wanted to? Sure. Let me
If
see.
it's not putting you too on the spot, Radhika.
No. This is my life. So I would love to. So there are two aspects to it, like the traditional devotional element that was done in temples by the villagers in India, and then it took a different form altogether when the Persians invaded India. So it was done in a courtyard setting where the courtesans would be pleasing the kings and the emperors in the courtyard with their subtleties and a little bit of seductive form started coming in, more from a devotional to more of the seductive form. So what I can illustrate is maybe both the aspects. One is more on the devotional side. So I have my hair dyed, so but so if I were doing something devotional, it would be more in terms of just in the form of in the name of Lord. In India we have multiple gods, so it would be more of offering a prayer, offering flowers, invocation to the deity. So that is one form of just devotion, right? Just devotion in awe of the Lord. That's one way of doing it. But then if you are performing in front of an emperor, that wouldn't cut it. So it would have a different meaning. So then, you developed a lot of sharpness and, movements. So it would be a lot of these intricate poses and just stylized movements to reflect the grace and nuances of the dance. So it would be a lot of circles, spins, ending in poses where there are, it is all about the grace, the body form that is depicted on it. You see different flavors and different schools of thoughts that exist even today in India. That some of them have stuck to the original devotional element, and some of them have gone towards more of the Mughal influence, as we call it. But one way or the other, you see a lot of spins. So you see a lot of these types of spins ending in like poses. You see a lot of that, and then you see a lot of like I was saying, it is just all footwork. So this is how you warm up every time you class. You're just doing a lot of this, a lot of breathing exercises along. But there is the storytelling part of it. So as I'm doing this, I'm telling you what I'm doing. This is footwork. This is how we end in a very, final tempo, where we increase the tempo in the end and then go something like that.
Thank you for that.
Tracy's moving somewhere. There she goes.
This is a question for Radhika. This is for Radhika. This is a completely different question.
Sure.
I didn't fully understand your story. What I got from it was that you were a woman going into a situation with a lot of white males. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So what was it that you were going against? What were you bringing to the situation that was new or rebellious or challenging? What were you challenging?
I think it was just entering into the world of the unknown. That was the challenge, but it was more about questioning the perception, right? Because when you're talking about the world of sales, especially to a person who's always been behind the desk coding or with an engineering background, it's very new. And so engineers have a certain idea or a philosophy when they talk about sales or marketing professionals. So it was getting past that perception to actually go deeper into it and try it out for myself. That was the challenging part, because it was everything that was said was true. But we shouldn't just assume based on perceptions, right? When we dig deeper, we find out that there is a lot of respect for every profession, for every person who's been there and has done years and years of has put in a lot of effort in that profession. We tend to label that without understanding deeper, right? There is a reason why perhaps a certain population or ethnicity is, naturally belongs to a certain profession at some point, and now is the time to maybe open it up a little bit more. But unless we explore that, and unless we make that effort to make it more diverse, it's going to stay that way. So I think that was the challenge, and that was what I rebelled in a certain way, if I can call that rebellion.
For our 5th grader, did you ever run for office, or will you? Because I would vote for you. You sound like you would get stuff done.
Thank you so much. I would really rather sit on the couch and criticize. There were a couple of grade school, high school club positions that I ran for, some successfully, some not, because I'm really not afraid to tell you exactly what I think, and that doesn't always play well. But really what I want to do is just tell stories. I want people, I think that's real gift, is trying to get people to be better listeners and to understand, both with personal stories and when we tell folk tales or myths, that there are age-old lessons that we all need to learn. We all have experiences that may not be exactly the same, but we share a lot of experiences that have elements. I'm pretty sure most of the people in this room have looked at a pile of canned spinach and said, no, right? I mean, it's a very small shared experience, but it's one of those things where you think, well, if I've shared that experience with this person, what else might I also have in common with them? So, no offices for me. I would be really, really mean.
Tracy, this is your living room, so you should make a decision when we need to stop.
Yeah,
Okay?
I think we can wrap it up. That would be great, Jon. We can wrap it up.
We stop?